Welcome to part 1 of my 4-part Clever series. I'm Sarah with the Adventure Squad, and today I'm going to be talking about the first game in the Clever series. As you can see, we have 3 of the games here, and we actually just ordered the 4th one, and I am so excited to try out the last Clever game. Today, I'm going to be touching on That's Pretty Clever and teaching you guys how to play. Now, this game takes about 30 minutes to play, depending on how long it takes people to take their turns, as always. This game is 1 to 4 players, so there is a solo mode, and it's great for anyone over the age of 14. Now, our kiddo, who played it when she was 11, picked it up pretty well, so kids under 14 can certainly play this game. It is just a little bit more challenging. The Clever series is definitely one of my favorite series of games to play. They're puzzly, they're pretty fast, and it's nice to just wind down in the evening with a pretty simple but puzzly game. So with that, let's jump in and show you how to play That's Pretty Clever. One of the great things about the Clever series is there's virtually no setup. All you need to play this game is a score sheet, the dice, the silver platter, and something to write with. The game does come with these little markers. However, we prefer to use either pencils or our erasable pens. That way, in case you make a mistake or you change your mind, you can just erase it and correct what you want to do. Let's go over the basics of a turn. The active player rolls all 6 dice. They choose a die to use and place it in the appropriate box in the upper left of our score sheet. We'll just say they take the green 2. They then do the appropriate action, so if it's the green 2, I would mark off the first space on the green track. We'll get into what each one of these tracks do in just a moment. Once the active player selects the die and takes their action, any dice that are lower than the selected die must go on the silver platter. No ones were rolled, so the rest of the dice can be re-rolled by the active player. Let's say the active player wants the red 4. They place it on the second slot of their dice squares here and take the appropriate action. Since they chose a 4, the 1 and the 2 must go in the silver platter. They then re-roll the last 2 dice. They select the last die that they want, and any remaining dice go in the silver platter. Any dice that go into the silver platter are unavailable to the active player until the end of their turn. The only time they would be able to use a die from the silver platter is if they had a +1 die, which we'll get into. If a player chooses a high number on their first or second roll, and all the other numbers are lower and have to go in the silver platter, that means the active player will have less dice and less actions to take during their turn. Once the active player has completed selecting their dice and taking their actions, the rest of the passive players can select one of the dice from the silver platter and take that action. They don't physically take the dice, they just select one of the dice and mark it on their score sheet. This means that any one die can be selected by multiple people. Once all of the passive players have finished with their actions, the turn is over. The dice are then given to the next person, who becomes the active player. A round ends after each player has been the active player once. Let's get into the different color areas on our score sheet. At the top of the sheet, you can see how many rounds you will be playing based on the player count. If you're playing with 1 to 2 players, you're going to play 6 rounds. If you have 3 players, it'll be 5 rounds, and if you have 4 players, you'll play 4 rounds. You can also see in the first 4 rounds, there are bonuses in the round box. So when you start a round, you cross off what round you're starting, and you get that bonus. We'll go over what all of these bonuses mean in a moment. There is 1 die matching the color of each section. There's also a white die, which acts as a wild. The white die is also used over here in the blue section. As you can see, you add together the blue and white dice, and you take that total value and cross off that number in the white boxes. For instance, if these were the dice values, I would be able to cross off the 9 in the blue section, 6 plus 3. If you select one of those dice to use in the blue section, The other die could be on the active player's score sheet, still on the table to re-roll, or on the silver platter. It is possible for the active player to mark 2 spaces in the blue area if, for example, they choose the blue die and later during the same turn choose to use the white die in the blue area. As you can see, there are numbers and symbols along the right edge and along the bottom edge of the blue section. These are bonuses that you can get for completing a row or column. Along the top, you can see the scoring for the blue section. If you've crossed off one number in the blue section, it would be 1 point. If you cross off, say, 8 numbers in this section, you would get 29 points. Each section has its own scoring, which gets added up for your total points at the end of the game. Let's take a look at the yellow section. In the yellow section, you mark a number equal to the value of the yellow die. So if you select the yellow die as the active player, you would mark off one of those numbers in the yellow section. Now there's 2 of each number in the yellow section, but you can only cross off 1 number per die. Just like in the blue section, you have bonuses along the right-hand edge that you can get throughout the game. If you complete any of these columns, the bottom row are points that you get for the end of the game. If you complete this leftmost column, you would get 10 points. If you complete the rightmost column, you would get 20 points. Let's move on to the green section. Spaces must be marked left to right without skipping spaces. The green die that you select must meet the minimum requirements of the space. For the first space, the green die must be a 1 or higher. If you cross that one off, the next space, your die has to be 2 or higher. So if your green die is a 1, you would not be able to cross off that next space. Just like the other sections, if you are able to cross off these spaces here along the way, you get these bonuses along the bottom. And up top are the points you would get for final scoring. The further along you get in the row, the more points you would get. For the red section, when you select the red die, you write the value of that die in the box. Some of the boxes further down the line have a ×2 in them, so you would multiply the value of your die times 2. At the end of the game, you would add up all the values you have in your red section, and that is your final score for the red section. Again, once you fill in a box that has a bonus on it, you would get that bonus. In the purple section, again, just like the last 2 sections, we're moving left to right. Each die value that you put as you go along must be higher than the last. The only exception is if you write a 6 in one of the spaces. If you write a 6 in a space, the next number can be any number. Just like the red section, once you fill out a box with a bonus under it, you get that bonus. For final scoring, you add up all of the numbers that you put in your purple section, and that's your final score for that section. And just a note about using dice. If a passive player cannot use any of the dice on the silver platter, they may use one from the active player's score sheet. If the active player can't use any of the dice rolled, they cannot mark anything on their score sheet for that roll. It still counts as one of their 3 rolls. So let's take a look at the bonuses. As you can see up here in the yellow section, we have a blue X and a green X. The X's mean that you go to that colored section, so the blue, you would go to the blue section and you can cross off any number in that section that you want. For the green X, you would go to the green section and cross off the next one in your row. Over here in the blue section, you can see there's an orange 5 and a purple 6. Anytime you get these bonuses, you can come down here to the appropriate section and write in those numbers. So you would get a 5 in your orange row, or a 6 in the purple row. Up here for our round bonus, you can see a black X and a black 6. That means that you can come down here and mark any number that you want, or write in a 6 in any one of these rows. You can't do both. You have to either mark an X or add a 6. The foxes have to do with endgame scoring. Each fox will be worth as many points as you have in your lowest scoring colored area. So let's say you have the lowest score in the red section. Each fox that you're able to collect throughout the game is worth that many points. So let's say you score 10 points for the red. If you have 2 foxes, they would give you 20 points total. As you can see, on the back side is the scoring. So you score each section and your foxes. Down here is going to be your total score for all sections combined. Looking back at the top of our paper here, we have re-rolls right here. Those can be used as the active player. You can use these as many times in a turn as you want, as long as you still have some available. So when you earn a re-roll, you just circle the circle so you know it's available. If you use a re-roll, you cross it out with either a slash or an X so you know that it's been used. If you choose to re-roll dice, you must re-roll all available dice. You cannot re-roll dice that are already on a score sheet or in the silver platter. You also cannot pick and choose which dice to re-roll. You must re-roll all available dice. Lastly, extra dice can only be used at the end of a turn, after the active player has selected all dice and passive players have selected their die that they will use. If you choose to use an extra die, it can be any of the 6 dice, even from an active player's score sheet. You can use multiple extra dice in a turn, but can only select a die once. You cannot select the same die as an extra die more than once. For instance, if I really need more reds, I can't choose to use multiple extra dies on this red 5. I can use one die to give myself one red 5. The game ends when the last active player has finished and passive players have finished their actions in the last round. Rerolls and extra dice are not worth points during scoring and will be lost if not used throughout the game. This is how a score sheet might look at the end of a game. If you flip it over, you can tally up all your points and get your final score. Whoever has the most points wins. In the case of a tie, whoever has the highest score in a singular area wins. So for this game, it would be 60. If the other player had a section that scored more than 60 points, they would win. Solo play is mostly the same. You start as the active player and take your turn. Then you become the passive player. As the passive player, you roll all 6 dice and then place the 3 lowest dice onto the silver platter. For this roll, I would place these on the silver platter. These are the dice I would be able to choose from as the passive player. If there's a tie in dice values, the die closer to the silver platter gets placed on the platter. So the 1 would be on the platter, and since I have 3 2s here, the 2 that are closest to the platter would be put on the platter. The goal for solo play is to get as many points as you can. On the back of the rulebook, there are different levels that you can try to go for and different point ranges that kind of tell you how good or maybe not good you're doing. And that's how you play. That's pretty clever. Now, if you're looking to try one of the clever games, I would suggest starting with this one. The other 2 that we have in the series are a little bit more challenging and have a little bit more going on for them. Each game is a little different. Each of the colored areas do different things, have different bonuses, that kind of thing. So I would suggest starting with this one if you're looking to start the Clever series. If you guys got value out of this video, feel free to leave a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe down below to catch the future parts of the Clever series, along with more how-to-plays and playthroughs of different board games. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, get your game on.